Welcome to the Wisdom Gathering, hosted by me, Patricia Mitchell. This episode I speak to Lis Cashin, author and public speaker. If you want to know more about me or the Wisdom Gathering, there's going to be links at the end of the episode. In the meantime, enjoy. So I'm delighted to say that today's Wisdom Gathering, we've got the lovely Lis Cashin, who has agreed to join us and to talk about her story, but more importantly, to get a takeout from it, because I know, Liz, welcome, by the way.
Thank you.
I know you've spoken about this, but I've seen you speak about your story and your shift towards sort of change in terms of how you then sort of restored yourself. But I know sometimes what I get from you is that it's too emotional to talk about, and that you're back there. So I do not want to re-traumatize you, because I think that's the thing with trauma. And I can always do a little front loader at the front of this, so I can edit it in. But tell us what you can about what your journey became, because I'm more interested in the journey, not to discount what happened, but to appreciate the trauma.
Yeah, and thank you. Thank you for having me, and also thank you for allowing me to share my story. And I think you're right. Sometimes I share my story in a way where I just say a few details about it, and others I've gone into more depth. But I think I didn't really understand trauma when I started to speak about it, and how complex trauma can be. And actually, by talking about trauma in the moment it happened can re-trigger. And so, wanting to be as kind to myself as possible. Kindness is a theme here at the moment around Mental Health Week. I talk about it in different ways. But basically what happened was, when I was 13, I killed my friend in a tragic accident at school. I threw a javelin, it hit her in the head, and then she died a few days later. It was devastating. It was incredibly traumatic. I know now that I didn't do anything wrong. Although as a 13-year-old, I blamed myself entirely. And in the 80s, there was no counselling, no therapy, no one to talk to. And so I then internalized a lot of very negative beliefs about myself, about the world, and actually lived with undiagnosed post-traumatic stress disorder for over 30 years.
And did anybody notice that? I mean, did anybody say, you were a different girl before you had the accident? I mean, did anyone, or did everybody just assume that this was some sort of, teenagers, adolescents, it's an awful thing?
Yeah. Some very unaware people in my family, have said to me, "Oh, you were such a moody child." And I think, oh my goodness, but that was a lack of awareness in the 80s. There was no mental health awareness. There wasn't even counselling. There was no understanding. And actually, I was expected to move on from it very quickly. A few months afterwards, somebody said to me, "It's happened now, you've just got to move on, and it's all in the past." And that was the attitude, really. You've just got to pull yourself together and get on with it. And so what I did was pretend to the outside world, to the best that I could, that actually I was all right, because that's what I was being expected to do. And internally it was chaos and rage, terror. I was very disconnected, actually. I think I was completely disconnected for a long time. I was in so much shock still. The trauma was too much to bear. And so I think, in some ways, the way I remember it now is it was almost like I was a walking zombie. I was functioning and almost going through the motions, but just really not here, not physically here, mentally here.
And the lesson that that I take out of this stuff, I mean, for everybody that's listening, is we split ourselves, don't we? We do that which we have to do to get through the day and live in this world, and then there's the shock, the trauma around the event, almost regardless of what the event is. Not that somebody dying in relation to one of your actions, but there are many actions that can put us into this trauma, but that's a profound trauma. And and it's interesting because people get caught up with the drama of the event, but what
Yeah.
you're left with is the trauma in your body, in your very being.
That's it, exactly. And one of the key things I've learned is actually how we can be many things at the same time. You know, I published a book last year about my story, but in it I wrote, you know, the power of also. So I'm this, and I'm also that, you know, and I think it's, we can be very single track, especially if we're feeling bad, you know, we can feel overwhelmed and we're just this. So I thought I was evil, that I deserved to be punished, and that, you know, I didn't deserve any sort of life whatsoever. And then I just went on to, you know, create that punishment for myself over many years. But, you know,
you're reinforcing it by your very actions. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And when my book came out last year, there was a lot of publicity, media, and it was actually quite traumatic. It was almost like reliving it again. But I had a lot of people from school, some I knew, some I didn't know. They'd seen it because it was in the national press, contacting me, and without doubt, every single one of them was supportive. You know, it was no way your fault. It was like the missing piece for me, because back then I was just so traumatized and nobody spoke to me about it, that I didn't hear other people. I wasn't allowed to go to the inquest because the media were there, and I was left with just my own version, which was a very dysfunctional remembrance, you know, in terms of how it portrayed me. And suddenly I heard all these other friendly voices saying, you know, it was the school's responsibility, you know, my friend should never have been allowed to stand where she was on the field, you know, that's not her fault and that's not my fault, that was the school's responsibility. And so all of these, you know, all of these missing pieces, if you like, I was able to kind of drop an even deeper level, so many layers where we hold these things within our systems. But, you know, one girl reached out and said, oh, I want to say thank you, because she joined the school a couple of years later. She wasn't there when it happened. All she remembers was how friendly I was to her and how I always used to make her laugh.
Oh,
I don't remember that, because I was still traumatized, and I don't remember that actually I had anything other than the trauma, because that's, you know, because it was
interesting, isn't it? And I think this is actually an incredibly helpful thing that for people that suffer with, for example, trauma, depression, any kind of dislocation in their personality at a certain period in time or over an extended period of time, that we're sitting in a room looking at life from that room, but other people are seeing us from the other rooms of our personality. And if we could just get out of that place. And I think what I also like about your story and your recovery, I mean, I have so appreciated all the stories that I read, but what I really appreciate about yours is that there is a kind of a process that you went through almost by accident. You found your way out by being incredibly open to things happening to you. Do you think it was the right time? Do you think it was happenstance? I know you were saying that you were punishing yourself, and you suddenly had a moment that God it wasn't a punishing God. Tell us a little bit about how you worked your way through out of it, because looking at you now, you'd kind of go, oh, that was unfortunate for Liz, but she's fine now.
And it definitely was a process. And, you know, having had no help in my 20s, I discovered ecstasy. Well, in fact, a friend gave me some. And for me, that was the first time that inner critic, that punishing voice just completely went away while I was on ecstasy. And so that became mentally addictive for me. So that was a first part. And I don't advocate drugs. You know, it's very difficult for me, because in a way, they did save me at that point in my life, which sounds very, you know, topsy-turvy for what we know about drugs, but they almost killed me in the end. So it was like, I found a connection to something through taking the drugs, but it was a false connection. And then I wanted to take more and more and more. And, you know, my life was spiraling out of control. You know, you can't take a lot of drugs and everything work out. That isn't what happens. But in a way, it had opened me up to to know that a different way was possible, even if it was fabricated at the time. And then I went on in my late 20s, went on a sales training course and read Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And in it, he says, think and act positively and you'll become positive. And it was like this light bulb went off for me. I thought it was literally, revelatory that actually up to that point, I just thought I was this victim of life. And, why was I born? I really was asking some bigger questions. And I think that set in motion what happened next. But I was saying, what is the purpose of all this? What's the meaning of life? Why was I born? Was it just to, cause misery to so many people? All of this was kind of playing out.
And I feel at this time it's worth reminding, the audience that because you are still in the trauma.
Totally. No help at all at this point.
You are still body, mentally in this trauma.
Totally. And still trying to hide it, still trying to hide how the chaos that was going on. And of course, having taken drugs was even more chaos. It was just, it was another way to punish myself, even though I thought, oh, great, I'm feeling great. Actually, it was a form of punishment because, it was harming me on a very deep level. And so after I kind of had this realization I had choice, then I kind of grabbed that with both hands and thought, right, so if it is possible, then I'm going to make it work. I'm going to find a way that I can get some peace of mind. That was my initial goal, to find some peace of mind.
Oh, and interesting that was the quest.
That was the quest, yeah, because it was just such turmoil inside. And cut a long story short, I ended up going on an extended traveling trip, which is something that was a seed of an idea that wouldn't go away. Over the years, it was, every time if I went on holiday, I never wanted to come back, and I didn't know how I was going to be able to make it happen. And then, life, what I believe now is life is always trying to support us. And, for me to say that through everything I've been through is quite a journey. But there was a way that actually I was able to then go away for a year traveling, and ended up on a beach in South Goa.
I might have been the same beach.
Yeah.
But
Beach.
I was about to say, I think travel is this extraordinary, and we're currently in lockdown due to COVID, and my niece is saying to me, I'm really worried about, not being able to travel. I love travel so much. Will I ever be able to travel again? But travel was one of the biggest reshapers in my life. It gets you in a different headset. So I think travel is an extraordinary way forward. So I get that travel could have opened up all sorts of experiences and your mindset and everything.
Exactly. And I think just being away from any reminders or anything about the trauma, or just being away from England and the UK, it was almost like I had permission to open up more.
Yes.
It was interesting. I didn't punish myself so much when I was out of the country. It was, strange really, but that's how it was.
No, I can see that. I can see travel kind of takes away. We're in such a different headset when we're traveling. We are firing neurologically so differently to adjust to where we're at.
Yeah.
We can't, it's part survivor, it's part being present, because there's so many new experiences to enjoy, but also to be wary of that the old ones take a back.
Yeah. It's so true. And it is about being present in the moment, isn't it? It's, so this Dutch woman who I'd met offered me Reiki. And at this point, I'd just been living that clubbing lifestyle, and I'd rejected religion. That was the answer to what you said, the belief about a punishing God. The 10 Commandments, it says, thou shalt not kill. It doesn't say, but it's all right if it was an accident. It just says, thou shalt not kill. And so for me, I'd really internalized that, like, if I die, I'm going straight to hell. It's going to be retribution, all of this. It was horrific. That thought, of course, was terrifying, but it actually kept me alive. It actually kept me from taking my own life because I was more afraid of what was waiting for me. So it's interesting the way these things can play out.
Quite complicated in there, isn't it?
Quite complicated. Exactly. But suddenly this girl offered me Reiki, and I thought, you know what, I'm traveling, I'm open to new ideas. She said, you just need to lie down fully clothed. If I try and explain it, it will sound quite strange. So, you know, if you just want to experience it, and I thought, you know what, what's the harm? I get to lie down on it in a lovely hut with the beach there. You know, it was lovely. And then she gave me Reiki, which is a form of energy healing, if people haven't heard of it. But within an hour of this session, I literally felt blissful, like really completely blissful for the first time ever, more than any drugs I'd ever tried, you know. And I couldn't believe, you know, my brain was trying to work out what was that, but I couldn't deny the experience. It's just so profound.
What do you think now, all this sort of time later, what do you think happened in, I mean, I've got my own ideas, but what do you think happened in that sort of session?
I think it was a spiritual awakening, but to a connection to something that's much greater than me, which doesn't rely on any religious dogma, but it is actually, you know, in my heart, and of which I am a part, of which we are all a part. You know, it's that thing that connects us all. That is my belief now about what happened. Was that it was an awakening. It was an awakening. I've been a different person since that experience.
Isn't that interesting? And that's just somebody shifting some energy around. Somebody just shifting some energy. I make it so oh, that's all I have to see now. But what I do find interesting, and this is the bit where I try and sort of get the bit about the wisdom gathering in, is you took yourself on a journey, and it almost not knowing what you were going to find, and you know, from a little seed of wanting to find peace, which is actually extraordinarily profound. That's what you walked into. So what happened after that? Because it, you know, it's like I'm trying to sort of find the thread in this that allows people to say, you know, this can happen to me, and your book, This Is Me, would, I'm sure, give people some insights. But you've gone on, you've written your book, you do public speaking. What was it that after you found this awakening, that you were able to do that made you think, now I have to share this?
Yeah, it was again, it was a journey, a process. So I had the awakening, and I think once you've had something happen that's just so profound, you can't go backwards. I couldn't go back to my old life. I knew that it just wouldn't fit. And so then went on this. It was almost like it became a new drug initially, because I just was like on a mission to almost recreate that feeling I'd had in that session. And what I know now is the more you chase these things, the kind of further away they are. You know, the fact that I was so open and trusting on that beach was almost like part of why it happened, rather than trying to make it happen. But I then explored all sorts of aspects of the mind, body, spirit, holistically, you know, trained in all sorts of things, coaching, NLP, Reiki, you know, all sorts of things. I was on this quest, really, to find this inner peace. But I went to a meditation center and did 3 weeks in silence. And the head of the center said to me, you really need to learn to be kinder to yourself. And I argued with him initially, saying, what do you mean? You know, I've been spending all this money and all this time doing all these courses. And as I was saying it, I thought, it was like it just dropped. I thought, oh my God, I've actually been punishing myself on another level, pushing to find peace of mind. You know, that's not how you find peace.
Yeah, I mean, there's a real irony, isn't it? I mean, I mentioned to you when we first met that I knew somebody who had passed because they'd been standing in a sports field and they were hit with a javelin, and we never thought about the person because we were just so busy thinking about this poor kid that had died. I mean, we never thought once that, oh my gosh, that person, how awful, or oh my gosh, what are they going through? It was the late 60s, early 70s. And I've been to storytelling events where there was a kid who shot one of his friends accidentally with his dad's gun. They were playing cowboys and Indians. But it's an interesting process in terms of just that, isn't it? That we're all walking around with this stuff, and how we find our way out of it.
Definitely. And I think mindfulness has been a big part for me, because in mindfulness, I got to sit with myself, and it really wasn't pretty. You can imagine, I wouldn't recommend this if you've been really traumatized, to just sit with yourself in mindfulness. I think I've done a lot of things the hard way. You know, I'd really get some support to hold you through that process. But it's made me, what I've realized is I was incredibly strong to have got through everything. But with mindfulness, I was able to keep going inside and really looking at all of those different aspects of me that I'd rejected, that I disowned, you know, piece by piece, because I had emotional abuse in my home life as well. You know, there was other stuff going on for me, so it's been layered and complex. But just committing to myself and committing to the journey and spending time with myself, I've got to, all those bits that I disowned, that I was angry with, that I rejected, you know, I've come to really love and accept. And in doing that, and realize that, you know, they had done nothing wrong. There was nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with me. And in that process, finding that inner peace that I'd been searching for, and then really finding it a calling to want to guide other people through that. You know, it's like, I can't keep this to myself. This is incredible. You know, the fact that when I look at my life, I just think it's almost miraculous from where I was and the journey that I've been on. But, you know, there was a journey and a process, and I think I want to give hope to people who might be struggling.
Yes, there isn't a magic pill, is there? But there is a process.
Yeah,
and,
there is a way out.
There is a way out, and it's obvious, and it may not even be obvious. I mean, I think first of all, one has to acknowledge within oneself that you're not happy. You know, like, actually, this isn't, it doesn't have to be like this, or I'm not happy, or there is things that I can do to shift this. So if there is somebody that's watching this or comes to watch this, or what would you say is a first step? What's the kind of, you know, if you like, you know, what's your goodie bag takeout in terms of what people can hold, or what they can share? Like, even the people that watch this might well be like, yeah, I'm pretty cool, I did that myself, you know, that happened to me. But what can we pass on to other people to say, I was listening to a talk from Lis Cashin, and, you know, she said X, and this might be useful to you?
I think it's to know that whatever you've been through, you have been having a normal reaction to an abnormal event. So I only learned this like a few years ago when I had my PTSD diagnosis and treatment. And she said, you've been having a normal reaction to an abnormal event. And I just burst out crying. I think the fact to call myself normal when I'd rejected myself so much was transformational and such a relief, you know. So however somebody is feeling, it's okay to feel that way. There is nothing wrong with you. There are maybe things that have happened to you that are, you know, are causing you to feel distress, or to feel anger, or to be afraid. And that's very different than the feeling there's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you at all. And I think that's a key thing for me, is understanding that I have the potential to be all things as well. It's, you know, I think we all like to think we're just these lovely people, but actually, you know, we've all had our moments. We've all judged people. We've all been angry at things, and actually an acceptance. So accept. If you can start to really just accept how you're feeling,
yes,
then that's the beginning of the journey. Because we live in this perfectionist society. No wonder we're all ashamed. I had so much shame about how I felt, because other people seem to have it sorted, and of course they don't.
No,
that's the other thing to know.
There's the shame about the act, then there's the shame about how you feel, then there's seeing other people, and there's this sort of layer upon layer of how we think we should be, but also that there is a process, it takes time. And what I found in my own personal journey was that you have to start developing your own discernment. Yes, that person can help you. No, that person can't, for good or for bad, but they're not helping. That person is helping. Not everybody can help us, you know, and we have to learn the discernment.
That's such a great point. And because people, you know, with mental health especially, people say, oh, reach out for support, but you have to reach out to the right person.
Yes.
You know, I think if you're struggling, you think you're going to be a burden to everyone. That's what I thought. God, no one wants to hear how I'm feeling. No one wants to hear my stuff. And I didn't really understand it either. So, you know, I didn't want to start going to people. So it's finding a trusted person that you can talk to.
And also, I mean, even so, for example, I have a niece, and she was struggling. She had some things going on in her life. She has a handicapped brother, and she found horses. That was an extraordinary way for her to reach out to another animal, not control her emotions, but understand her emotions, you know, like foot on the accelerator, foot off the accelerator, just learn how to sort of, if you like, swim through life. And she did an extraordinary job. Anyway, Liz, I am going to sign off now. I just want to do another book name check for you. Your book is called This Is Me. I'm sure it's available on Amazon.com or Amazon.co.uk. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am just so grateful for all this. Stories have always been such a huge part of my life, and I think they inform us without being dogmatic, and that's what I love about them. And thank you so much for sharing yours.
Thank you so much for having me.
And if you'd like to know more about The Wisdom Gathering, please check out the website, thewisdomgathering.com. And if you'd like to know more about me, you can check me out at the heartfulmind.com website. And we look forward to seeing you again in the next Wisdom Gathering. In the meantime, take care.